Last week, I reviewed Marvel's Spider-Man in anticipation for Spider-Man 2, and today, I'll be following that video up by reviewing the sorta half-sequel, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's essentially the Uncharted Lost Legacy of Insomniac's Spider-Verse. I'm a big fan of Miles Morales as a character, especially this iteration, and I was very excited to replay it and look back on it. I ended up giving the first game a 9.5 out of 10, saying it's a top 10 game for me, so Miles Morales has a lot to live up to. This game has been out for 3 years, so there will be spoilers. I do recommend you play this game without spoilers, but as you'll soon come to see, the story almost takes a back seat in this game. So strap in and let's look back at Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. Like I said, Miles Morales has big shoes to fill, both the character in the story and the game in comparison to the last one. So I'll start this video by saying how this game compares to the last one, and I'm just gonna cut straight to it. The first game is better. As a concept, I'm getting tired of origin stories, and it's much more refreshing and interesting to see a Spider-Man in the middle of his 8th year than a Spider-Man in his first. There aren't as many suits in this game because Miles has a much smaller catalog to pull from, and the ones they choose are a bit lackluster. I'm not a fan of a lot of these suits, and the majority of the suits I do like are the ones that are Insomniac originals. On top of that, for my first playthrough of these games, I like to only use the main suit that I'm supposed to for the main missions, just to ensure that I get the full experience. This unfortunately means that I have to use this butt-ugly suit for the first third of the game. The game lacks almost essential web gadgets, like the impact web, replacing them with more gimmicky and unnecessary gadgets. On top of that, Miles only has 4 web gadgets in comparison to Pete's 8. I brought this up in the review of the first game, but I'm also not a fan of ridiculously advanced technology and superhero media. And Peter's game fortunately doesn't lean into that too much. Otto's prosthetic work and octopus limbs took years of research from the combined minds of 2 geniuses. The Tinkerer is 15. This nanotech shit is a bit of a thorn in my side whenever I play this game. It doesn't really piss me off, but I really wish it wasn't there. Speaking of, the main 2 supervillains of the first game have very sympathetic backgrounds, Dr. Octavius especially, and they are both lovable characters who help the world and society when they aren't doing what they deem necessary. The main villain of this game, Finn Mason, is one of the most obnoxious characters in this series. I fucking hate her. I like these interpretations of almost every character in Insomniac's universe, but Finn is just so annoying. I understand and am sympathetic to her backstory and the death of her brother, but she's so stubborn. No matter what Miles tells her and no matter how objectively correct Miles is, she never listens to him until Harlem is seconds away from blowing up. And she does try and correct it and saves Miles because she can't let Newform kill another person she loves, but this is objectively her fault. Simon Krieger mocks her, saying that her brother's death was her fault, which is debatable. But if Miles died and Harlem blew up, it would actually be entirely her fault. But this game does do a few things better than the first, starting with traversal. The web-swinging animations are much more expressive and specific to the character. The way he leaps off of rooftops and flips backwards to face the camera before falling into a headfirst dive is just full of the exact... It's just really cool. But seriously, his animations are specific to him as he's a rookie hero. He hasn't gotten the hang of web-swinging fully yet, so his animations are a little sloppier, which is a very creative detail, further expanding on the character of Miles Morales. The air tricks are an upgrade from the first game as well, being much more fluid as opposed to the more stilted animations of the first game. The majority of the open-world collectibles are worse, especially the ones that create this. The open world in itself is a very good playground for web swinging. It matches or even surpasses the first game with its winter aesthetic and Christmas decorations. Insomniac switched this game up a bit with the gameplay, with finishers now being used when you get a combo of 15, and focus meters being used for Venom attacks. Now, I'm not mad at Insomniac for naming his electric abilities Venom powers. No, I'm mad at the sick fuck who named it that in 2011. I am curious whether or not the sequel will acknowledge that Miles has Venom powers, and then later a new villain comes around calling himself Venom. I doubt it, but it is possible that he is never actually referred to as Venom in the sequel, and he's only ever called Harry or the Symbiote, since they don't call him by name in any of the trailers. Anyways, back to reviewing Miles Morales in this Miles Morales review, I'm not the biggest fan of finishers now being used after 15-hit combos instead of focus bars. It gets really obnoxious when you almost have a finisher and then catch a stray bullet. But it is a good substitution as the focus meter does fit the Venom powers much better. And if you do drop a combo and lose that finisher, Venom attacks are pretty strong and kick some serious ass. Both finishers and Venom attacks are satisfying to hit as well, with fantastic animations and sound design. The stealth sections have incredibly improved in this game. The additions of wall and ceiling takedowns are exactly what the first game was missing. The animations for them are great, and they provide the player with more possibilities and freedom. And the implementation of Miles' camouflage ability into stealth is really fun, letting you get away with dangerous stealth takedowns and providing a get-out-of-jail-free card if you get caught. The boss fights in Miles Morales don't compare well to the first game, but are still very replayable. The fight against Prowler doesn't fit too well in the plot, seeming a little forced, but it regardless has entertaining gameplay that just stretches long enough to be a bit repetitive. The Tinkerer's fight brings together strategies the player uses against all type of underground thugs while introducing new attacks, and I actually love the Rhino boss fights. I thought the Rhino and Scorpion boss fight in the first game would be much better as separate fights. And this game fulfills that wish by giving Rhino his own fights. They feel similar to the Rhino fight in the first game, picking up where it left off, while also using his weakness against Venom powers to introduce the ability. His fight evolves too, as his Roxxon armor protects him against Venom attacks, making the player find a way to work around it. And the banter between Miles and Rhino is very well written, calling back to the first game.
You know, man, chasing you through the city kind of felt like a wild, what's the word? Wild goose chase!
Wild goose? No. No! I hate chase of goose!
This game has certain gameplay challenges, similar to the Taskmaster challenges from the first one, where they feature a hollow Spidey teaching Miles while he's away. These unlock certain skills like double web zips, which is a big improvement on the skill trees, now creatively crafted skill webs, being the sole skill unlock process. And to tie it back to the topic of boss fights, it all ends in a fight against the Vulture. What a finale. The only training challenges I like are the traversal ones, the others are a bit lame, and that theme is kept in the boss fight. It's pretty cool to play since, hey, it's the Vulture. I don't think anyone was expecting that. And I like the aerial combat in these games, but you quickly realize why grouping Vulture with Electro was for the best. They try to make up for that by adding a second Vulture to fight, but since it's the same thing twice at the same time, it really doesn't add much and just gives you more to juggle. I really liked how Electro and Vulture had their own movesets, and they each had their own ways to be taken down. But Double Vulture lacks that creative diversity. It's also pretty anticlimactic. It's definitely shocking, and you have to lock in for the fight, but once you're done, you sit there and think, what the fuck just happened? Since it's just a training protocol, there's absolutely no danger or stakes, so Vulture comes at you and you're just like, okay? It's a bit unfortunate that Spider-Man Miles Morales came out after Into the Spider-Verse, as we were spoiled with this fantastic design. It's a steep drop in costume design from Uncle Aaron's great and comic-y Prowler suit to... I really don't like the way this suit looks. To be fair, I'm not really a fan of any of the Prowler suits, and the only one I really like is in the Spider-Verse movie. And I don't think that would translate to realism well. But Miles has an amazing starting suit, the best traditional Miles suit I've ever seen, and a dog-ass suit in between them. It is a fun sort of nod to the design in the Ultimate Comics, which is the universe Miles is originally from, but that doesn't ease the searing pain I get in my eyes when I look at it. Rhino still has his techie suit that I don't really like, and it only gets worse. But I actually don't really mind his new technological addition to his armor, since the people supplying it also made renewable energy that will power Harlem for half a millennium. The Tinkerer's outfit is a little lame in my opinion and doesn't fit too well. Every time she was on screen, I thought she looked like a character from Tron. Even though I'm a bit mixed on how these characters look, these iterations of these characters are very solid. Insomniac keeps proving that they know how to write these characters. I brought up in my first Spider-Man video that I do like Jefferson and Aaron Davis in the Spider-Verse films more, but I much prefer Insomniac's Miles and Rio Morales. Because I already got in depth about Miles, and a certain happened in the first game, I won't be playing the comparison game with these two. For Aaron Davis though, I think his animated counterpart excels due to his relationship with Miles. We know Jeff and Rio don't talk with Aaron anymore, but it's clear to see how much Aaron means to Miles and how strong their bond is. But since the whole family hasn't talked to Aaron in years in the Insomniac universe, Miles and Aaron are a bit more estranged. And they do share some moments together, but it always kind of seems like Aaron is lecturing Miles a bit. Rio definitely exists in the Spider-Verse movies. Insomniac, okay, Rio's role is definitely improved upon in the sequel Across the Spider-Verse, but she's really only there to be Miles' parent. I prefer Insomniac's Rio Morales because she exists outside of Miles, and her world doesn't revolve around him. She absolutely loves him and is always there for him and is a great mother, but she also has rallies and a city council campaign to run. We actually get a peek into her world. And the scenes with Miles when she finds out he's Spider-Man and continues to support him, and when she runs to Miles in the finale is so impactful emotionally. Miles Morales himself is definitely my favorite version of this character. His excitement over his superpowers is endearing, and I love how he jumps the gun a bit, like during the prisoner convoy. His quips suck, but given his past experience with Rhino, he knows how to push his buttons. I especially love how he was essentially a Spider-Man superfan before he knew and started working with him. So there is that friendship and teacher dynamic with Peter, but his Spidey nerdiness still shines through. He admires Pete's work while in the middle of fighting escaped convicts, and is very excited to work with him. I love the symbolism of his character development, like how the mural at the beginning shows that Miles hasn't found his place in Harlem. He's yet to cement himself as a superhero and is insecure about his role as a Spider-Man. He feels like he's not fit for the mantle of Spider-Man yet, even though he has bioelectric abilities that Peter doesn't have. It's also a bit refreshing to see a more anxious Spidey in combat. I have really bad anxiety. I'm not one of those white people that freak out and get excited when they see a realistic panic attack in media, but it was nice to see Miles get a bit nervous. Like, he doesn't have a full-blown panic attack, but he gets worried and says things like this.
He can't lose. He never loses.
If I were in Miles' shoes, I'd probably be thinking the same thing. Definitely one of my favorite scenes, though, is the Oath. Watching these two talk about the giant, nearly catastrophic fight they just had is awesome. My favorite character in this game, though, is definitely Simon Krieger. He's very one-dimensional, and that's honestly perfect for him. Everything he does is for money. And for how he's written, that's just as good as Martin Lee's motive. He's hilarious and never really acknowledges how ridiculous everything is. He's walking next to a thief in power armor and an 8-foot-tall Rhino Man on his way to torture a nanotech supervillain and a kid with spider and electricity powers, and doesn't bat an eye when someone threatens to blow the whistle on his whole operation. I think these two clips summarize his character very well.
Because you just smell like next level bioengineering. And you know what that smells like to me, kid? That smells like money. I'm gonna hit the gym. Leg day, can't skip it. Get her to tell us where my new form is.
The great character writing is enhanced by the phenomenal performance artists and voice actors. Like I said last week, everything Yuri Lowenthal touches turns to gold. Najee Jeter is a great Miles Morales and really sells the performance, and did a stellar job in The Last of Us as well. Troy Baker is in it, so it goes without saying that he did a great job, and Jacqueline Pinole gave probably the most moving performance in this game. The entire cast has mastered these characters. I especially love Fred Tatasciore, also known as Nikolai from Call of Duty Zombies, who plays the part of Rhino. The writing when it comes to dialogue is pretty hit or miss. Miles' arc of becoming the hero he wants to be and not being dependent on Peter is perfectly completed with this line.
Don't make me kill you! You can't win! Why do you keep fighting?
Because I'm Spider-Man.
The dialogue gets absolutely hilarious at times.
Plus, now you're Spider.
And then,
Says the guy who has to wear an ascot to school.
Hey, only on Tuesdays.
the dialogue is usually really good. It does flop sometimes, usually when Genki opens his mouth, but most of the time it's great. Before we get into the side missions, I'm going to mention a few miscellaneous things about this game that I think are pretty cool. I love the first in-person appearance of J. Jonah Jameson and how he's dressed as Santa Claus for the holidays. I think the opening credits of this game really solidified that this isn't some half-assed sequel, but that this is really Miles' game. Even though he's barely in it, Rick Mason is a really fun and well-written character, even if he's only there to... Suit damage in missions is really rad, and all of the sign language they use is accurate. American Sign Language does have regional accents with how you sign words, and sometimes what signs you use, and I'm not sure if they got the East Coast regional signing right. But they overall got the sign language very accurate, which is nice to see, as you don't often see sign language in media that often. Spider-Man Miles Morales has marginally better side missions than the first game. They're a bit blander and don't feature any exciting new villains. The only actual villain that shows up in the side missions is the Kingpin, and he's not actually there. This was really disappointing, as I was expecting to see some faces I would recognize, and when one is finally teased, it just turns out to be someone we've already seen. There is a side mission where you get the fantastic Spider-Cat suit, but that unfortunately has a sort of lame lead-up. The main reason why I barely prefer the side missions in this game is not due to the quality of the side missions, but the system of using the Friendly Neighborhood app. It's a bit better for side missions, and saves my controller from being mashed R3 while swinging around Manhattan, looking for crimes to 100% the borough. I will say though, the ending of this game is a lot better and will resonate with you more if you complete all of the side quests before heading into the final mission. I think that the story of Spider-Man Miles Morales is, without question, much worse than the first one. I love the setup of Peter leaving to be Mary Jane's photographer in Symkaria, leaving Miles to be New York's only Spider-Man. I love how the Rhino opening sequence leaves Miles nerve-wracked with the weight of Manhattan's safety on his shoulders. Miles and Rio moving from Brooklyn to Harlem in the winter season, with Miles not quite fitting in as a hero or in Harlem, is a really good idea. But Finn's stubborn and unending revenge plot is very similar to Martin Lee's with a less likable character. And Martin Lee in the first game only wants to kill Norman Osborn and those that worked on the Devil's Breath formula. Finn's brother died, and now she wants to blow up a building. And speaking of Finn, Miles doesn't really have many villains. The only ones I can think of are Prowler, sometimes Jackal I think, Green Goblin I guess because he killed Peter in the Ultimate Comics, and now the Spot. So since there aren't many villains for Miles, I like the idea of what they did with the Spot, where they take a D-lister like the Tinkerer and completely rework them to make them better fit the hero. But to do that, you have to keep the name, because that's what keeps them from being a ripoff of the original. And they did that. They took Phineas Mason, reworked him to be Finn Mason, and made a completely new version of the Tinkerer, which I would be fine with if the name wasn't dumb as rocks. It's so hard to take her seriously when she's walking around calling herself the Tinkerer. And when she's introduced, everyone playing is confused, because they're longtime friends now, and you automatically think that we're supposed to know who she is, but we don't. From there, the plot is pretty slow, with Christmas dinner, which is pretty fun and charming, except for the fact Miles is really risking his identity, and then there's the train mission with Uncle Aaron. It's a rough section to replay, but I think it's really fun how Aaron tells Miles he knows he's Spider-Man. Then Rio has her campaign rally, and we get the absolutely stunning bridge sequence. As soon as the Tinkerer is introduced in person on the bridge, it becomes painfully obvious that it's Finn, but at least they don't pull an Arkham Knight and act like it's some big secret the whole game. No, they reveal it's Finn pretty much immediately, which I think was the smart choice, since it's now not a mystery about who the Tinkerer is, but it becomes about the choice Miles has to tell her he's Spider-Man or not. I also am not a big fan of how they deal with the Prowler in this game, with him selling out Spidey and the Tinkerer. Believe me, I'd give her up before you even asked me to. But he seems a bit shoehorned in because you can't make a Miles Morales product without Uncle Aaron being the Prowler. Don't get me wrong, he is a cool character, I just think he could have been utilized better. In a plot point they still haven't really clarified yet, I thought that Finn killed Rhino, mainly because I thought she cut his throat the first time I played the game. I'm gonna assume he's still alive because they don't make it as big of a deal as it should be if she did kill him. But man, was that confusing. The story and performances really excel though when Rio finds out that Miles is Spider-Man, and her support for her son is very impactful. And when you hear her calling for him when he comes home, your stomach drops. Anyways, the final battle happens. Finn sacrifices herself, but she put Miles in life-threatening danger, and this whole thing was her fault, so I literally don't care. But I really love how Miles and his alter ego are accepted by Harlem at the end. And when he's barely escaped death, the first thing he asks is if everyone is okay. Once Peter gets back, we get one of the hardest final shots I've ever seen, and we get an exciting post-credit scene where Harry and the symbiote are released through Curt Connors by Norman's order. As a whole, I think that Spider-Man Miles Morales is a really solid entry in Insomniac's Marvel Universe that easily gets overshadowed by its predecessor. It's honestly hard not to compare the two, especially when you absolutely should play the first game before this one. I know that because of that, this review came across as negative, but this game is better than an overwhelming majority of games I have played. I give it an 8.5 out of 10, and I wouldn't say that it's a must-play right now, but chances are Spider-Man 2 will add on to this plot, so it probably will be a must-play when that game releases. Which is in 12 hours. This video went up on October 19th, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 hours before Spider-Man 2's release. Because fuck you, East Coasters, I don't have to wait till midnight for shit, baby! This has been my most anticipated game for the past 5 years. So since this video did come out before the game did, meaning there's no way I could play it beforehand, I want to get out some predictions while I still can. So I guess spoiler warning, because if by some slim chance I am right about any of these, you might not want to go in with any ideas. So first off, this isn't so much a prediction as it is a pieced together plot. In the gameplay reveal when they first showed the symbiote suit, they showed that Kraven was chasing Lizard and that they started at a house in Queens. Miles says something that implies this is the first time he's seen Pete in the symbiote suit, and since Dr. Connors is working to cure Harry, this is what I think. I'm pretty sure that Kraven has heard of a giant lizard and goes to New York to hunt it, and maybe the Spider-Man. Peter and Kurt are working on something relating to the symbiote in Kurt's basement, then Dr. Connors lizards out, breaks whatever is containing the symbiote, which then latches to Peter for the first time. Then Kraven is chasing the lizard so he can have a giant lizard skull in his mansion, and Pete is trying to stop Kraven so that Kurt can live and help heal Harry. I also think that because Dr. Delaney is dressed as the lizard and you can find lizard blood in the first game, Kurt is reformed and practically cured before the second game, and is now back to being a normal non-lizard scientist. I think that Kraven is going to call off the hunt for the lizard and shift his priorities to the symbiote, whether it be Spider-Man or Venom. Then Venom and Kraven will get into a fight, with one of them killing the other, probably Venom killing Kraven. And as the symbiote suit and Kraven are in the same game, chances are they're probably doing the Kraven's Last Hunt story, but they might not be. I also think that since Venom and Martin Lee are both active players in this game, I'm very convinced that Anti-Venom is going to be created in this game in some form. They hung on a shot of a building called Spoiler Studios in one of the trailers, and since Mysterio wore a CGI suit in Far From Home, I bet that's Quentin Beck's hideout, and he creates his illusions through movie effects. There seems to be some Prowler side quests, and since side quests can be completed before or after the main story, I bet Prowler is going to live through this game. Since Devil's Breath was intended to be a cure-all, I bet that some form of it will make its users stronger and go insane, and will become the Goblin formula. And Green Goblin will be the secret villain of Spider-Man 2 the same way Doc Ock was in the first one. I've also heard people say that you'll play as Miles and fight an evil Peter with the symbiote, and I don't think that's going to be the case. But I bet the turning point in Peter's symbiote saga is going to be a cutscene where the two argue and Peter decks the fuck out of Miles. Then he does some corny Drake shit where he looks at his hands and says, "What have I done?" That about wraps it up for my predictions. If any of these predictions are remotely true, then just remember that I called it, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than every Insomniac writer, and you owe me $600. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, a like would be appreciated and it would really help me out. And you might like my other stuff too. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comments, and let me know what you thought of Spider-Man Miles Morales. I had a great time replaying it and honestly forgot how much I loved it. Anyways, my next video should be out on schedule next Thursday, and it is a long one, at least 45 minutes long. So keep an eye out for that. I'm very excited for you guys to see. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.